Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to the weekly Sikh Network show. And today's show, I'm going to talk to you about the 350 Sikh Women campaign, which we launched at the beginning of January, featuring 350 Sikh women. The idea behind the campaign was essentially to celebrate and commemorate the 350th Prakash of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. We felt that women in this country are very seldom recognised for the work and the contribution that they do. And we also felt that women in history was something that we needed to raise further awareness of and remind people about the contribution that Sikh women have given in history, whether that was through our Guru's times or the era after that. And so the 350 Sikh campaign started off with featuring women from history. So people like Mata Kivi, Bibi Amro, Mai Paggo, and then looking at Maharani Jinda, and coming through to artists like Amrita Shergill, and to the present day time. When we were doing this research, we learnt a great deal ourselves about the women in history and people that we could actually draw insight and inspiration from in terms of their lives and the areas that they lived in to the present time. And the 350 Sikh campaign on Twitter and Facebook had a lot of recognition and was well received by so many women. And so one of the things that we did, whilst our team did its own research, so we looked at women in different categories, we looked at women in the arts, women in education, women in journalism, women in politics, so various categories, women in business. And one of the things that we wanted to do, we wanted to contact women who were already excelling in these fields to tell us about other women that didn't have that same profile. So we undertook a lot of research and really explored different avenues to get people to submit names as well. And it was brilliant. I think something like the second week we had nominations coming in through Facebook, through our email page, and through Twitter. So this was absolutely brilliant. And we never thought that we would get the level of encouragement, enthusiasm for this campaign in the way that we actually did. And we are now going to be doing an event on the 15th of March with the EY Sikh Network in collaboration to to present the 350 Sikh women in our campaign. And that event is on our Twitter page and our Facebook page. And there's an Eventbrite, so please do book your place. We hope you can join us in London on the 15th of March. Please go on to our Twitter or Facebook page and click on the Eventbrite and book your place now. This is celebrating International Women's Day. Now we're going to go and watch a video celebrating some of the women in history on 350 Sikh women.
Find a journey, 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 find a
Welcome back. I do hope that you enjoyed the video celebrating 350 Sikh women. Today in the studio with me we have Rupinder Kaur, who is one of the women that were featured in the 350 Sikh women, and she was featured in the section of arts. So welcome to the show, Rupinder.
Thank you. Vaheguru Ji Ka
Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Tell me how it actually felt being featured on the 350 Sikh women campaign.
I was actually speechless. I remember I saw it when I woke up in the morning on Twitter, and I was just like, wow. I couldn't believe it, because I've been following the campaign since it launched, and from the beginning when you started off with Mata Tripta Ji to Mai Pago, Maharani Jind Kaur, Princess Sophia, you know, all these amazing Sikh women that I look up to, and I was featured as one of them. I actually couldn't believe it, if I'm quite honest, so I'm extremely thankful and grateful for the Sikh Network for recognising what I do.
And were there a lot of people, because you're obviously in university at the moment,
Yeah.
and you're studying as a biomedical student.
Yeah.
So was there a lot of people talking about the campaign, and other women that you knew were following the campaign and, you know, learning about sort of, we talked about Mata Tripta, Mata
Yeah.
Kivi, and some people saying that they weren't aware of their contribution?
Yeah, definitely. I think in general, Sikh women's contribution, whether it's history or whatever field it is, we're not aware. And so I think the campaign did a great job of educating people. And I did hear a lot of my friends and people at uni were like, you know, it's a great thing going on. We're educating the youth, which needs to be known, because if the youth don't know, then how are future generations going to know about this?
And was there anyone in the history section that you sort of stood out for you, that you thought, wow, I wasn't aware of this, or actually this is a great role model?
Yeah. For me, I think one of the greatest role models from like the beginning is Mata Tripta Ji. She was the first kind of Sikh woman. She planted the seeds of Sikhi in my view. And obviously with Bebe Nanki, her love for Guru Nanak Dev Ji is just amazing. It's such an inspiration of true love. So I think for me, those two women in particular, and Mata Pagor, Mai Pago, again, as another inspiration of how brave she was, and her bravery is a great example.
Right. It's interesting you said about Mai Pago, because it was the one of the tweets on the campaign that was retweeted the most amount of times.
Yeah.
And actually a lot of people found that, and actually we had retweets not just from Sikhs, but actually non-Sikhs.
Yeah.
We had a lot of non-Sikhs also participating in the campaign, because it created so much awareness, and women's sort of campaigns also taking an interest in that. So that's great to hear that actually people at university, as you said, were talking about the women in history. And tell us a little bit about you. And so you were featured in the arts section. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and also the group of women that were also featured, some of them in this section that you were part of a group of.
So I was featured in a section of arts, and I'm a poet. I write in Punjabi, Hindi and English, and some of the two women that I'm friends with, Jaspreet Kaur and Jasmine Kaur. So I think them two, again, they're inspirations and role models. I see them as well, as long as being my sisters also. In particular, Jaspreet, I think she was one of the first spoken word artists I came across. And Jasmine also, with her words, she's very, very powerful. So I think the two of them, they're not only just great friends, but also great inspirations that I see.
That's brilliant. And is there anything from your poetry that you'd like to share with us today? Like maybe a little something in Punjabi that you may have written, some words, or anything that you'd like to sort of share with viewers today?
I've got a poem in Punjabi about Maa Boli. I'd like to share that one.
Yeah.
ਮਾਂ ਬੋਲੀ ਮੇਰੀ ਮਾਂ ਵਾਂਗੂ ਸਕੂਨ ਦੇਂਦੀ ਅੱਖਰ ਉਸਤੇ ਮਿਸ਼ਰੀ ਤੋਂ ਮਿੱਠੇ ਸਾਹਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਗੰਧ ਕੋਲਦੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਜਾਪੇ ਕੋਈ ਵਿਛੜੀ ਸਹੇਲੀ ਮੇਰੀ ਮਾਂ ਬੋਲੀ ਦੇ ਗਈ ਪਿਆਰ ਦੀ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨੀ ਰਾਜ਼ ਦੀ ਕਹਾਣੀ ਇੱਕ ਅੱਖਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਸਦੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਖੂਨ ਦੀ ਰਵਾਨਗੀ ਪੰਜਾਂ ਦਾ ਤੂੰ ਐਬ ਛੱਡ ਤੇਰੇ ਦਿਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਸ ਜਾਏ ਮੇਰੀ ਮਾਂ ਬੋਲੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ.
Wow, that's absolutely brilliant and
Thank you.
so beautiful and very well written in Punjabi. Tell me, where did you get this inspiration? And do you write in Punjabi first? And how does this inspiration come to you?
Well, I never went to Punjabi school or anything. How I learnt to read Punjabi or write Punjabi was through poetry, actually.
Right.
When I started to try and read Gurbani a bit, when I wanted to have a better understanding. So I literally used to put the letters together, and that's how I started reading it. And I think my interest became more when I got more into poetry, particularly Shiv Kumar Batalvi and Amrita Pritam, who was one of the 350 Sikh women as well. She's like, I absolutely love her so much.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to read more. And this was before I started writing. So I wanted to read more, and obviously I had to know how to read and write it properly. So it came from that. And my inspiration for writing in Punjabi is because I feel nowadays there's not very many people that do it, and especially the youth like myself, we're not really into our Maboli Punjabi, which is quite disheartening, which is why I try to write in Punjabi as much as I can, and I try to spread the word of it as well.
It's absolutely amazing to see a girl that's born in this country having that level of Punjabi and being able to write at that level, because some of the language and the words that you're using is not your everyday language that we speak. And you talked about Amrita Pritam, and there are lots of inspirational women maybe in Punjab, but in terms of in this country, seeing a revival of such poetry is really, really, to me, very heartening and inspirational. And so in terms of the language used to write this poem, how did you get to those? How do you find those words?
I don't know. I don't really think I'm going to use these words, if I'm honest. It just kind of just comes. But I think it's because I've read a lot of old poetry. So I think it's like the words from that. And I think that's what it is, probably because I've read like Heer by Waris Shah and Bulleh Shah. And their language is very, very old Punjabi. So I think I probably picked it up from that. But when I do write, I don't think about what words I'm going to use. It kind of just flows in that sense.
Yeah. So I know you did an event with other spoken word artists recently, and when you're at these events, do you speak in Punjabi in terms of the poetry that you share, or is it mainly in English? How does the audience receive that? Are there lots of Sikh women there?
The last event that I did was Cause of the Qawm at University of Birmingham, and this event was to try and get the cause of the Qawm spoken about, women in our history, the past and the present. So we had a series of different speakers talking about the women in history, and I did a bit on the Sikh Gurus' time, the women in that period, and then I finished with a poem in Punjabi. I like to perform something in Punjabi because I feel no one else does it as well, so it's kind of different, but at the same time it's like I feel it's kind of like my duty as well as a Punjabi poet to make people more aware of Punjabi. But when I do get the reaction from the audience, it's mainly just like, wow, how do you write this in Punjabi and stuff? You're so young. And I've even had some people say, are you born in like Punjab? Or even recently I had someone say, are you born in Lahore? Because I did a poem on like Punjab about Lahore and stuff. So it's quite amazing, the response, if I'm quite honest. But yeah, it's interesting.
And what do you think, do you want to see more women and more men writing Punjabi in terms of those that are interested in the arts? And how do you think that we can actually revive that?
Definitely, I think I would definitely, especially in, not even just in the UK, even in Punjab, I feel there's not very many poets now that actually write in Punjabi. And if we don't continue that legacy that was started off by our gurus, you know, writing poetry, I think it's going to get lost, and I really don't want that to get lost, because Punjab is so rich for its poetry in the past, and we need to kind of get back there, because there's so much power in the kalam, in the pen, that Punjab can possibly have. So I think to go about with it, I think to start off with, the change begins with yourself. So like myself, I try and write in Punjabi, try and spread the word, but then it comes down to each individual's interest as well. So I think maybe, I don't know, we could start things up in Gurdwara or at universities, like small groups, spreading how to read and write Punjabi for starters, and then I think we could go about from that.
Yeah, no, that absolutely is incredible. And how do your parents feel in terms of, you know, your writing ability, your poetry, and then being featured on 350 Sikh Women?
They were quite amazed. When I first started writing, my dad was like, what are you doing? But then he slowly realised, he's like, yeah, she's actually doing something, you know, she's getting out there. My mum's always been really supportive, and my mum also really, really loves poetry, so I get that inspiration from her as well. And that's how I know a bit of Hindi as well, because she was born in Delhi, so yeah.
So as someone researching being part of 350 Sikh Women, when I came across some of your work, Those are the kind of thoughts I had. As I thought a young girl writing Punjabi, being able to read Punjabi and having such a grasp of the language is quite unheard of, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I was fortunate enough to go to Punjabi school and read and write Punjabi, and able to. I remember when you used to write letters on the blue letter to India. My father used to sort of dictate it and I'd write it, which was great, but we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
And so we are losing the ability to write the language and to continue what we've learned, but to continue that further, unless obviously we're reading the newspaper in Punjabi or something.
True.
So for me, coming across you was really, really, I thought it was astounding. And one of the reasons we had a discussion about people that were being featured. And we felt that having, a lot of people said, well, actually, some of the people we wanted to feature said, I don't feel like, I've done enough, you know. And but what we wanted to say to them is what you're doing is incredible, because you're giving back to the community, part of our culture and history, which has kind of disappeared almost.
Yeah.
And so I think well done to you in terms of, keeping that Punjabi alive. And we'd like to see so many more Punjabi artists. And I think especially from people that have migrated from Punjab and have a good grasp of the language, and how they feel inspired by you being featured in 350 Sikh Women. So I think it's absolutely brilliant, really inspirational. In terms of, you obviously write a lot in English as well.
Yeah.
And that obviously appeals to a wider genre. How does, so would you like to share something in English, but also maybe tell us about how it's received in the sort of non-Sikh environment as well?
Well, I did a spoken word event, I think it was last week now? I think it was last week, yeah. And I did a poem on women as well. And it was received quite well, actually, because it's a different audience to the non-Sikh audience, so you get to see their reaction as well. So they quite enjoyed it. Like, I wrote about, not just because my poem was about women being a revolution,
right?
And I spoke about like different women through, like, I did include my Bago as well, and I included like Boudica, who was like kind of like the female non-Sikh version, you could say, and the likes of Rosa Parks and Princess Sophia. And it was about how women can do anything they want because they can. So yeah, that was quite well received. And tomorrow evening I've got another event which is a non-Sikh event, so I'm looking forward to that, but it's more on diversity, so it's going to be a mix of different spoken word artists as well, so I'm looking forward to see how that goes.
Right, okay. And in terms of the other sort of sections of the 350 Sikh Women, were there any other women that really inspired you, or kind of you were really surprised to see certain categories with such women that had, sort of achieved so much?
I think one woman, Amrita Shergill, the painter, I've seen some of her paintings, and I was amazed. I was like, wow, this woman is so talented. And I did a research about her, and I read that her mother actually was good friends with Maharaja Ranjit Singh's wife, I think. Or was it his daughter? Something like that, I'm not 100% sure. But it was quite interesting to see that history connection when I was reading. So it was very, very interesting. So that led me to want to know more about her and stuff. So yeah.
Because not everybody knew that her mother was Hungarian.
Yeah, that was another thing.
And her father was Sikh.
Yeah.
She studied in some of the greatest institutions in terms of art in France. So really well acclaimed in terms of her artist and work. One of the interesting things that I found when I was doing the research for 350 Sikh Women is how many women in the education sector we have that have really achieved great deals. So definitely. We have a lot of women in institutions in this country that are professors, that are leading institutions, leading in their fields in a way that actually we never really hear about. And why do you think that Sikh women are not very good at talking about the work that they've achieved and the sort of brilliance and the kind of awards some of them have achieved in their fields?
I think as Sikh women, we're just always quite humble. We're not very open about what we do, or we don't like to speak up about it because sometimes we're being taught that way as well, not to. But with the campaign, I felt it was great to kind of be a voice for those women as well that don't like to be heard, or, you know, like myself, I don't really like to go out and say I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So it was a way of being a voice as well, I felt, for women in that same sense.
Yeah. Okay. And in terms of your own sort of personal experience, in your own wider family, so your mother and people that you know, how has, you know, celebrating the success of women, how do you think that's changed, or do you think it hasn't changed enough?
I think we're getting there, kind of, but I think still women aren't being appreciated as much. I don't know, now I'm thinking about it, I feel we have an influence of our culture more than Sikhi sometimes, because our culture kind of puts women down, the Punjabi culture, but at the same time Sikhi uplifts us, you know, it empowers us. If we look right from the beginning, like Mata Tripta ji, Mai Pago ji, you know, these incredible women, they were so powerful. And now, like, women, they kind of sometimes, they don't really like to be out there as much, sometimes because of society, their family and whatnot. But I think we're kind of slowly getting out of that now. Like, women are speaking out more and being known more for their work and stuff and being appreciated, which is why I think, again, the campaign, like I said, is a great way of being a voice for those women that go unheard as well.
Yeah, it's quite clear that the 350 Sikh Women campaign reminded us, especially when looking at history, about the values of our Guruji around equality, around fairness, about equal opportunities. And yet in the present day and age, we as women have always struggled to celebrate our successes. We should take and draw some great strength from this campaign and the message from our gurus all the way through about women that actually stood up and fought in battles, women that stood against oppression, women that fought for rights of other women and for other communities as well. So we have a great history in which we can draw upon lots of references and examples of greatness of our Sikh women. So one of the things that we wanted to give a very clear message through the campaign was actually we have a lot to celebrate. There are some amazing women out there doing some wonderful, wonderful stuff, and to be able to have had a platform and have had this campaign around 350 Sikh women has really awoken quite a lot of us up and down the country in terms of actually how do we then support other women? How do we work together? How do we collaborate? How do we make sure that women are given not only these platforms, but our future generations are given these platforms? Future generations have a great legacy upon which they can draw on in terms of some of the great women that we've featured. And today we're in conversation with Rupinder Kaur, who's been featured in our art section. Rupinder, it would be great to hear from you in terms of your English poem. If you could share something for our viewers today.
Yeah, sure. I've got a poem which is about my mother, actually.
Right, okay.
The silence of her words, the pain behind her smile, the quietness of her voice, sometimes for me, sometimes for the sake of society, for living in a community that does not like an outraged woman that speak their mind, but she speaks through me, in my heart, as I am a part of her. Her words caged away, break free, and come towards me, and come in the ink of my pen, to write every unspoken story of her and her ancestors that was silenced away, my muse, my mother.
Wow, that's really, you know, very sort of introspective. How did your mother feel about this? Have you shared this poem with her?
Yeah, she follows me on Instagram as well, just to see my work. She was amazed. But this poem in general, I am speaking about my mother, but also about every other mother out there as well within our community. Like I said, you know, their words are often silenced away, they're not spoken, and I feel with our ancestors as well, they were silenced, they didn't speak out for their rights and whatnot. But whereas if we go more back down into history, like I said, we had the likes of Mai Fagor and, as you said, fighting on the battlefield for their rights and stuff. Whereas now we kind of don't really do that. But we're getting out there, like I said, so it's a great thing, a great start. And as a writer, I do feel that is a kind of responsibility that I do have as well, to speak about the unspoken things within our community.
So, you know, you're using your poetry to say the things that, you know, a lot of people are not able to say.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a generation of our mothers
Yeah.
that sacrificed a great deal
Yeah.
for us to be able to enjoy the freedoms that we
Yeah,
have today,
definitely.
because like you said, they didn't have some of those freedoms. With that comes some level of responsibility, I think. One of the things that the 350 Sikh Women campaign sort of highlighted to us is that women are doing amazing work,
Yeah.
without a question of a doubt. And but we weren't clear about how many women were then able to give back to their communities or their future generations in terms of a Sikhi perspective. I mean, just listening to you and some of your poetry, so whilst you're doing something within the arts and excelling, you're actually giving something back to our community and future generations. How do you think some of the women, sort of maybe in education or journalism, what do you see as their collective responsibility towards future generations, or maybe the Sikh community as a whole? And do you actually think that they should have a responsibility or not?
I don't know, that's a good question actually. Should they have a responsibility or not? Like I said, sometimes I feel as a writer I do have a responsibility of telling the wider audience things that are not known about. But I guess it comes down to each individual, what they see as their responsibility, or if they see it as a responsibility as well, or if they just do it out of pure love or seva, or, you know, yeah, I think it's how they view this responsibility, I would say. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I wouldn't say it's a responsibility, it's more like having that love that what you like to do and how you want to go about with this. But yeah, I think did you say journalists and...
Well, I think there's a lot of categories. We featured businesses, we featured journalists, politics, arts. So yeah, we had lots of different sections that we featured in. It's just about really looking at, do people actually consciously think about that maybe? So you might be a professor leading in sort of medicine, for example.
Yeah.
How do you mentor support other Sikh women in your field? How do you give back to the Sikh community as such? What do you think you could offer back, for example? So one of the questions we as a team were asking, we wondered how many women that we featured asked themselves this question, or maybe struggled or weren't able to connect to a group also as such in terms of being able to input or give that back. So it was a question really. The question is around, what do you think that people excelling in their fields, do you think they should have a responsibility of giving back, of supporting other women, giving other young people an opportunity?
I think we should definitely support other women whether it's within the same category or whether they're not in the same category, but it's just good to support your sisters, empower each other and help them excel in their fields and try and support, because if we don't support each other, who else is going to support each other? And within being a responsibility, I feel some women are seen as role models and other young Sikh females, or, you know, they do look up to you and they do aspire to be like you, which sometimes can be quite scary because you do feel you have a responsibility, but at the same time it does make you realise that people do look up to you to aspire to be like you, whether it's in art or media or, you know, women like yourself in politics, which I think is great.
Right. So some of the feedback we had back was women. So one of the reasons I asked this question is some of the women came back and said it really, being on the 350 Sikh women list, really made them think about, well, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
It's great. So it's been great as a campaign to raise awareness. It's been great to learn, educate not only ourselves but the wider audience about women, Sikh women in this country and what they've achieved. And so some of the women were saying, I feel that actually I'm doing all this brilliant work, but I'm not really helping anybody else.
Yeah.
So, and that's why, you know, I think a lot of you that were on the 350 Sikh women list may have asked that question about how could you give back. And some of the ideas that have come through is around maybe mentoring and coaching other women, but actually reaching out to women in the same field so that there's more collaboration, especially in terms of if you're Midland based or you're London based or wherever you may be, knowing that there's a network. So we've had people feedback around people that we've featured that have invited those people to come and do talks elsewhere or be engaged with them. So that's been really brilliant. It's almost like providing a directory as such as well of people you could contact, people you weren't aware of that possibly are near where you live or doing something very similar to yourself. It could be research, or it could be a piece of journalism, making a movie as such.
Yeah.
So it's really opened. Whilst we did a campaign, it's not just a list. Actually,
definitely.
what's come out of it is a lot. So, any thoughts on that?
I think it's great. It is great to have a kind of resource to look back, a directory to look back on and see, wow, there's so many women within this sector doing so many different things. So we get to see the diversity of Sikh women. Like, Sikh women aren't just limited to a certain sector, but we're so diverse, which is amazing, which is beautiful, I think.
Yeah. So one of the things that we were quite, fortunate to find out from the 350 Sikh women is women in the police and the armed forces.
Yeah.
And we are represented as such. And we've
Yeah.
got some very high achieving women, especially in the Metropolitan Police, for example. How does that make you feel?
I was actually really surprised. I remember I saw it on Twitter and there was quite a few women, and I did not know that at all. And I think that's absolutely incredible. There's so many women that are in the armed forces, in the police. It's incredible because, again, it goes back to our history of being able to fight this kind of being in the same line of things. So I found it incredible. I honestly did not know there were so many women that are in this sector. So.
And did you read about the woman that was the first police officer in the country, the female woman?
Yeah, I saw that as well. Again, a great inspiration to myself and other young Sikhs out there of being one of the kind, which is amazing.
And since the campaign, because it's been over a month now since we closed the campaign on the 31st of January, what have people been saying, so that what have people been talking about? Have they been talking about it? Have they heard about it since? I know it was well covered in the sort of media and things like that. So have you heard anything as a result of that?
I've heard about the event taking place on the 15th, obviously, and I've heard people are still actually hashtagging it as well on Twitter, which is great to see, to try and get more women out there. So I thought that's a great response, that it's still kind of going on as well.
Yeah. And so we've had a lot of people, when we were doing the campaign, were saying, why don't you do the international women, so women in Canada, women in India or Punjab. And we did feel that we wanted to focus initially on the UK, because it was about really sort of understanding the context within which we're, which we're working here, but actually raising profile of a lot of women that don't traditionally. There are lots of, Forbes and the Times will have the top 100 lists. How often do you see a Sikh woman?
That's
How often
so
do you
true.
see a woman?
That's true. How often do you see a woman? That's so true.
So do you think there's a responsibility on us in a way? So, I think the Sikh Network doing this campaign, took that responsibility very seriously, especially in the vetting process, especially doing the research around women, especially making sure that it was quite inclusive, and so that we'd thoroughly research that area. So any thoughts on that?
I think, again, it's kind of, people are expecting, what are they going to do next? Is there going to be another campaign or more events, or what is going to be the response of this? So I think something that we all do look forward. I look forward to myself to seeing what the Sikh Network will do next about this campaign.
Yeah. So the event that we're doing on International Women's Day on the 15th of March in London, we've had a lot of people come back and say, look, we could do an exhibition. What do we do with all the profiles you've collated? You've done some videos. You've seen one today on the show, and you'll see one at the end. And so there's a lot of stuff that can actually come out of this. But one of the things is, whose responsibility is it to continuously, so that we don't just have a one-off campaign, for example. Is it our responsibility in terms of making sure that we are letting the rest of the world know about the brilliance and the work that women in this country have achieved? Or should we be relying on Forbes or Times or other magazines to do that for us?
I think it does kind of come back to the Sikh Network, because they were the ones who started the campaign, but also I would say not just a Sikh campaign, but everyone who has seen the campaign, everyone on social media, everyone can take a part in this, whether they are not part of the Sikh network or in whatever work they do, try and contribute towards and talk about, you know, the greatness of Sikh women, the diversity of them. So yeah, I would say yes, it does come down to the Sikh network, but also everyone involved around it as well. So yeah.
Yeah. So we had some great coverage from the BBC Asia Network.
Yeah.
And Shazia Awan's show. So she featured and she thought it was really amazing. And so we've had lots of different followers.
Yeah.
And what would you say to journalists out there who are Sikh or radio presenters that have been featured in terms of what you would want to see from them as a result of this campaign going forward?
I think I'd like to see them talk more about Sikh women, particularly in our history, even present day actually, because there's so many women out there we still probably don't know of. But I think I'd like to hear more about like the involvement of Sikh women and how their contribution is not towards everything. So yeah.
So one of the sections that really was very emotional for me when I was doing the research was the women of the movement.
Yeah.
So women of Ep4. So whether that was the Widows' Colony, whether that was around Ep4 Blue Star, there was a lot of images that we found which were really, really shocking and disturbing, but really important as well, because it isn't just about what happened to them, it's about what they stood up for, it's about what they believed. And there were some, you know, young children in those images as well. So the Women of the Movement section actually got, surprisingly, got a lot of interest, and the Widows' Colony got a lot of retweets after my bungle. So what were your thoughts on the tweets around the Sikh women in the movement?
I was actually very, very amazed because I really didn't know much about the women in the movement. So when I was looking at the images, especially the image that particularly I was one of the two young girls, I was very, very shocked at that they're so young and they died at such a young age, they gave Shahidi at such a young age, and that really stuck to me the most. Yeah.
So a lot of people are always a bit hesitant to talk about Ep4, but I think there's something very powerful about images.
Yeah, definitely.
And what images actually express, because I think they're more expressive than sometimes words.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think for me, it just highlighted and resonated with me about actually the struggle of Ep4.
That's so true.
And how we sometimes forget the women that were part of the movement.
Yeah, we always hear about the men, we never hear about the women, so I thought this was again a great thing of being a voice of those women that we weren't aware of.
Yeah, and also the strength of some of these women, because actually I remember seeing one of those women actually took active political life and got involved in politics as a result of losing a husband who became Shaheed, but actually didn't just sort of feel sorry for herself, but actually took it upon her to raise her voice and to you know, get involved and try and shape some of the political direction of Punjab at that time. So you know, it's not just about remembering women that died for a cause or were part of it. It's about what they did. Some of these women did after that. Do you have any thoughts about, especially around the women in the Widows' Colony?
I think it's very upsetting and very, very sad at the same time, but also a very powerful kind of thing at the same time. It makes you feel that these women, they didn't give up. They still, you know, So I don't have words, if I'm quite honest.
I love that image of the Widows' Colony, of the women together, because actually there is, you know, unfortunately in Delhi, where these women live, and they are quite mud dwellings, but actually all they have is each other.
Yeah.
And sharing their sort of sorrow and their plight and their stories together is all that they have. And I thought that picture was so moving, and that image of actually what they've actually gone through, but their resilience, you know, and that they're still here. So Rupinder, we are sort of coming towards the end of the show, but what else is there for Rupinder in terms of going forward in the work that you're doing around your poetry?
Writing more, I guess, but also because I am a biomedical student, I've got another year and a half left, so hopefully finish that, and I'm hopefully looking towards getting published one day, maybe, hopefully, in Punjabi and English and Hindi, and also just trying to create as much awareness as I can for Ma Boli Punjabi with Marji's Kirpa, So yeah.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today on the 350 Sikh Women campaign. And for viewers at home, thank you for joining us. This will be a show that we do bring to you much regularly. We will be featuring a lot of the women from 350 Sikh Women campaign as we go forward. We want to leave you today with a video of 350 Sikh women in the modern time, and we hope you will join us again. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.